Why take the long road to the top if you can kick the doors down on a rival? Well, these MMA fighters weren't exactly gifted their UFC title shots, but in comparison to most contenders, they made a pretty rapid ascent to the belt. Now, without further ado, and ranked in no particular order, here are some of the fastest rises to become a UFC champion. Number 10. Brock Lesnar. With a few minor tweaks, we could have easily seen Brock Lesnar challenging for a UFC title a lot quicker than he actually did. After transitioning to MMA from the WWE and earning a dominant win in his pro debut, it's not like anyone was expecting Brock to be an instant hit within the heavyweight division. But somehow, in his opening matchup against Frank Mir, Lesnar was able to put on a respectable performance before he was eventually caught with a knee bar. But after finding his bearings in the UFC, Brock eventually defeated Heath Herring, which earned him a title shot against the champion Randy Couture, a bout he would win by way of TKO. Just 3 fights into his UFC career and 4 into his time as a professional, the Brock Lesnar experiment had paid off, and a new UFC heavyweight champion was crowned. Number 9. Holm. In 2015, Ronda's run of dominance had swept the UFC, leaving most people convinced that she was in no danger of losing her title to anyone in the division. But earlier that same year, a former world champion boxer made her debut, and after scoring back-to-back wins over Marion Renault and Raquel Pennington, Holm was given a shot at Ronda Rousey in November of 2015, facing the champion on the biggest stage possible. A sellout stadium in Australia was the venue, and early on it became very clear that Ronda Rousey wasn't going to have her own way. Holly put on a striking masterclass at UFC 193, showing a clear gap in their skill set on the feet, and by the time the legendary head kick came in the second round, Holm was already in cruise control. It was a stunning underdog performance and a perfect way to cap off her first year in the UFC. Number 8. Demetrious Johnson. Most people forget that Demetrious Johnson was once a very solid bantamweight contender during his time in the WEC, and later his early UFC run. Sure, losses to Dominic Cruz and Brad Pickett put his physical shortcomings into perspective, but his earlier performances were promising and had a lot of people thinking that he would be a perfect fit for a lower weight class. And sure enough, they were right. After winning his first 2 UFC outings before then losing to Dominic Cruz for the belt, Johnson entered the promotion's inaugural flyweight tournament in March of 2012, going to a draw with Ian McCall in a truly bizarre situation before then beating him in the rematch. Then, with Joseph Benavidez in front of him, Johnson would earn a split decision victory, taking home UFC gold and beginning one of the longest title reigns in the promotion's history. Number 7. Joanna Jedrzejczyk. 2014 was a busy time for the now retired Joanna Jedrzejczyk. After beating the pioneer Rosie Sexton in London, England, the UFC offered her a chance to compete in their promotion, and after securing back-to-back wins over Juliana Lima and her fierce rival Claudia Gadelha, Joanna came face-to-face with the inaugural strawweight champion Carla Esparza. And despite the champion holding the wrestling edge, Joanna made this a one-sided affair, stopping the champion in just the second round of the fight. It was a masterful performance from the Polish striker, and one that put her name on the map. Within less than a year, Joanna went from making her UFC debut to capturing a world title, and she would enjoy the longest reign the division has ever seen. Number 6. Rampage Jackson. Quinton Rampage Jackson was already one of the most celebrated fighters in the sport by the time he touched down in the UFC. A run in the Pride promotion saw him earn wins over the likes of Kevin Randleman, Igor Vovchanchin, Ricardo Arona, and Chuck Liddell. So, when the Iceman's old rival made his UFC debut in 2007 and scored a second-round TKO against Marvin Eastman, the stage was set for a rematch, this time for the light heavyweight belt. Their second meeting took place just 3 months after Jackson had made his promotional debut, and as it turned out, it was far quicker than the first. In the opening round, Jackson was able to score a massive knockout, bringing the Liddell era to a comprehensive end. With just 1 fight in the UFC prior to his title shot, Rampage had one of the fastest rises to becoming a champion, and his knockout of Chuck Liddell will likely be shown on highlight reels for many years to come. Number 5. Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya may have taken 6 fights to reach championship status in the UFC, but the span of time between his debut and capturing the title was only 18 months. After arriving in the promotion in February of 2018, he went on to defeat Rob Wilkinson, Marvin Vettori, Brad Tavares, Derek Brunson, Anderson Silva, Kelvin Gastelum, and Robert Whittaker, accumulating a perfect 7-0 record in just a year and a half. Fight by fight, Israel Adesanya grew more comfortable in the cage, showing his striking mastery while also battling through adversity. And when the time finally came to take on the champion Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya was more than ready and proceeded to finish him in the second round, securing the undisputed title in October of 2019. Number 4. Zhang Weili. Prior to becoming a two-time strawweight champion in the UFC, Zhang Weili had worked up a reputation for herself on the regional scene as a highly dangerous finisher. A loss in her pro debut had given way to a 16-fight winning streak, which she managed to extend once she made her UFC debut in August of 2018, going 3-0 in the organization just 7 months after her arrival. So, when she finally earned her shot at the division's champion, Jessica Andrade, Zhang Weili made the most of the opportunity, dominating the Brazilian in front of a Chinese audience to take home a 42-second TKO. After a few ups and downs since initially winning the title, Zhang Weili has once again reached the top of the division, and frankly, it looks as though it will take something truly special to knock her off once again. Number 3. Anderson Silva. By the time Anderson Silva rose through the ranks of the Cage Rage promotion and became its middleweight champion, it was clear that he was a very special breed of fighter, and after securing 3 title defenses, all by way of finish, the UFC came knocking and proceeded to put the Spider into a middleweight title eliminator bout, facing off with the veteran Chris Lieben in June of 2006. And as many of you know, Silva made short work of his debut opponent, setting himself up for a clash with the champion Rich Franklin in just his second UFC fight. Despite heading into the bout as an underdog, Silva would go on to dominate Franklin, landing some vicious knees in the clinch to earn a lopsided TKO win. And the rest, as they say, is history. Number 2. Alex Pereira. A recent entry comes in next in the form of the newly crowned middleweight champion Alex Pereira. His rise through the UFC was undoubtedly accelerated due to his long-standing rivalry with Israel Adesanya. The pair had 2 fights in kickboxing that saw Alex go 2-0, and after joining the UFC in November of 2021 and earning 2 strong victories, Pereira was given a massive jump in competition in the form of Sean Strickland. Out of every possible matchup in the middleweight's top 15, Sean Strickland was probably one of the best stylistic matchups, given that he was likely to stand in front of Alex. And sure enough, that's exactly what he did, only to be knocked out by Pereira's trademark left hook. But beating Israel Adesanya under MMA rules was always going to be his toughest challenge, and when the two faced off at UFC 281, Adesanya had a clear edge for the majority of the bout. Despite being behind on the scorecards heading into the 5th round, Pereira found his opening late into the final minutes, landing a flurry of strikes onto Israel's chin, forcing the stoppage just seconds later. It was a pretty surreal moment, a true underdog story, and one that left this former kickboxing champion with UFC gold around his waist. Number 1. Jiri Prochazka. Jiri Prochazka's incredible run through the rise in light heavyweight division made him a fan favorite by the time the UFC came to sign him. Riding a 10-fight win streak with 9 finishes, Jiri was immediately thrown into the top 10 at 205 pounds, taking on Volkan Ozdemir for his promotional debut in July of 2020. His wild and reckless but highly creative fighting style was an instant hit with the fans, and his knockouts of Volkan Ozdemir and the former title challenger Dominic Reyes shortly after proved that he was ready for a shot at the belt. And when the time came to face off against the champion Glover Teixeira at UFC 275, the two delivered an instant classic, with Jiri finding the submission in the final round of a fight he was actually losing. 3 wins was all it took for Prochazka to become a UFC champion, and even if his title reign was sadly cut short, his championship rise was undoubtedly exciting to watch. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.